Okay, boys and girls, welcome to our next lesson. Our next lesson here is going to be on the coordinate plane. So make sure to write that down in your notes, the coordinate plane. And this is basically our graphing of just points. So all we're going to do today is talk about the parts of a graph and how to plot points and how to recognize the different aspects of a coordinate plane. We're not going to be graphing lines or anything like that today. We're just trying to find out the basis of how to plot points and work with graphs. A couple labels I want to talk to you about. First, I want to talk to you about is the x-axis. The x-axis, as you can see, I have the x right here, so that's my x-axis, and that is a horizontal line, and that is this line right here. That is my x-axis. And then the other axis I want to talk about, and it's labeled at the top here, is this y. That's my y-axis. That is my vertical axis, and that goes up and down. And you can see that they intersect. And when you draw a graph, you start by creating your x and y axis. That is where you start by when you draw it to get the ball rolling. You can see that it's darkened compared to the other lines on the graph. Now, where they intersect, where the 2 points intersect is called the origin, and that's right here, and that is called the origin. So where the x and y axis intersect is called the origin. Uh, by intersecting the x and y axis, we create 4 quadrants and or sections, and then we call them quadrants. And the first quadrant is the upper right-hand corner, and that's quadrant 1. And then we move counterclockwise, which means we're going to move this way around. So this one's going to be quadrant 2. And notice when I'm writing, down here is quadrant 3, that we write them in Roman numerals. So you get to practice your Roman numeral writing. This will be about the only time all year we use Roman numerals. And that's quadrant 4 right there. So we have quadrant 1, 2, 3, and 4 starting the upper right and going counterclockwise. So those are the important labels and parts of where the points are. In order to know where points are, find points, and so we all know what we're doing, we have to use what we call ordered pair. So ordered pair is how we are going to plot points. When we use ordered pair, in a general form is going to be x, y, which means we move on our x-axis first. The first number moves you right or left, right if it's positive, left if it's negative, and the second number moves you up or down, up if it's positive, down if it's negative. And that's where the xy comes from because that's the axis that I am moving on. So for example, if I were to give you point 3, 2, then that means I would move 3 on the x-axis and then 2 on the y-axis, and my point would be right here. And that's how I would move to go from one point to or from the origin to the point. 3 to the right, 2 up. You always start at the origin every time you're plotting points. Make sure you write down the different information on here. If you need to pause it, make sure you pause it. Otherwise, I am moving on to the next slide. In our next slide, all you have to do is name the coordinates of the points. So the points are on the graph there on the coordinate plane, and all you have to do is tell me where they are located. So you have to use your ordered pair here, and when you use ordered pair, you have to make sure that you use parentheses. So I'm going to start with point A. Point A is right here. Right there is point A. How do I get there? Well, starting at the origin, I went 1, 2, 3 right, up 1. So 3 right, up 1 is going to be 3, 1. And that's how I say that ordered pair, 3, 1. I always put parentheses around my ordered pair, and I must put a comma between the numbers. But 3, 1 is how you say it. Now, if I were going to do point B is down here. So that's 1 to the left, 2 down. 1 to the left is -1, 2 down is -2. So it's -1, -2. Parentheses around them, comma in between. To get to point C, and if you can see it, try to do the formula a little bit in your mind. That's going to be 5 to the right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down. So point C is going to be 5, -5. Again, parentheses and a comma in between. And the last one is D here, and that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4 to the right, 1, 2, 3, 4 up. So that's going to be -4, 4. Make sure that you move right or left first, up or down second. Otherwise, your points are going to be all in the wrong spot. You're going to be placing them, and you're going to have your graphs shifted when you start creating them. Right or left first, up or down second. If you need to pause, make sure you pause right now. Otherwise, I am moving on to the next screen. In our next screen, we're going to do the opposite. This time I've given you the coordinates. You need to place them on the coordinate plane. And then you also need to describe the location of the point. And I'll show you what I mean by that as I'm working through this. So in our first example A, the ordered pair is 4, 1, which means I'm going to go 4 to the right, up 1. Now I am showing all of my guidelines here as I'm writing, but that's because you can't see me pointing to them, so I'm drawing them. You do not need to draw them when you're working on these problems by yourself. So I go 4 to the right, up 1. I'm going to put my point there, and then I have to put the letter, which was A, right next to it so that we know what point that is. And I labeled it point A. So now I've plotted the point. That's how you plot a point. Second thing it says is describe the location of the point. To describe the location of the point, you have to tell me where it is based on the labels I gave you on the first screen. I gave you an origin, I gave you an x-axis, a y-axis, and 4 quadrants. So this one fits into quadrant 1. So describe the location, I would put quadrant 1. And that's how you describe the location. Not a sentence, not a paragraph, just where it is on there, it's in quadrant 1. So for example B here, 0, 3. 0 means I do not move right or left at all, and I just go up 3. 0, 3 be right there. I put the B next to my point so we know which one it is. All right, I've plotted the point. Now let's describe its location. To describe its location, it's not in a quadrant, it's not at the origin, it is on the y-axis. So I would put y-axis. That is how I would describe the location. For example, C here, when I do C, -2, -5, that's going to be 2 to the left, 5 down. When I get to there, I put my point, label it C. That is not on an XY axis or the origin. That is in the quadrant, and that is quadrant 3. Remember, we go counterclockwise, starting from the upper right-hand corner. That is quadrant 3, or quadrant. Let me spell that correctly. Let me get rid of that N in there. Sorry about that. Quadrant. There we go. Quadrant 3. And that's how we get to that one. In our last example, D, 4, -5. I'm going to go 4 to the right. -5 means I'm going to go 5 down. Put my point, label it, and that is quadrant number 4. Quadrant 4. And that's how you describe the location of the point. So when I say describe the location of the point, I'm referring to which quadrant it's in, or is it on an axis, or is it at the origin. Okay, if you need to pause, make sure you pause here.